In this video, we can talk about listening network events in Playwright with C#.NET. One of the most distinguished features of Playwright is its ability to listen the network events and perform a lot of different operations that we could not able to perform with other tools like Selenium, for example. Playwright allows listening to various types of events happening in a web page, such as network request, creation of a child page, creating a dedicated workers, etc. There are so many things that we can actually do with the Playwright events. And one of the use case for the network event is this. For example, if you are going to be clicking a button in one of the page, and if you wanted to see what is going to be the request being sent to the API and what is the response coming back from the API as the data that we are going to be using within our application, we can verify that using the network interception operation or the network event operation in Playwright. And that's exactly is going to be true even for other kind of operation like this use case, for example. For example, if we click a button in the UI and if we wanted to see if the request of the server goes to a different URL and wait for that particular URL to really appear, we could also able to verify that. It's not just getting the URL of the browser and then verifying the partial URL, but the response which is coming back from the server. We could able to verify that as well. So this is another use case that we can leverage the power of the events in Playwright. And some of the best example code for this is this one. As you can see here, we are using a method called as wait for request async method, where I'm going to specify that this is going to be the URL, like a URL predicate really, that the list is going to be the URL that I'm looking for once I click a button product. And once I've clicked the button product, I'm going to call the actual response on this particular line, as you can see over here, and then I'm verifying what is going to be the response coming back. So I can verify the response object over here to see if the response is actually the one which I'm looking for, what is the response type, and what is the response status and data, things of that nature. I could able to perform all these operations in this particular variable. And the same code we can also write in a different way, something like this. As you can see here, I'm going to be encapsulate. As you can see, I'm going to wrap the click operation inside the method called as run and wait for response async. Basically, it has a run and as a prefix for the wait and response async method. But here, the good thing about this run and method is you could be able to pass the action, and the action is going to be nothing but the click operation in this example. We could be able to do that. And then we can verify if the response contains this particular URL. This is pretty much exactly the same operation that you are seeing over here, but instead of writing it in 3 different isolated lines, we could be able to just wrap it up in one single line, and then we can just get the response back. This is another way of writing the same code that you are seeing over here. So this is one of the example of how we can wait for a request and get the response back based on the action that we perform. And similarly, we can also extend this condition check with even more operation by specifying what is the status text of that particular response coming back over here. So it's not just the request operation that we are performing, but also we are performing a response async, and we're going to verify what is the response text going to be looking like, whether it's an okay text or not. So we could do that, which is also another way of doing it. And we can also wait for a navigation to happen, the second use case which I was talking about, this one. So let's say if I click a button, then we could be able to wait for the whole navigation to happen. But here I'm not really waiting for any of the URL really, but I could be able to do that using this operation. You can see that this is the same click login operation that we wrote in our page object model code. But the good thing about here is we are also waiting for the navigation to happen, and we are verifying if the page has gone to this particular URL, which is nothing but the /account/login URL. So this is a wildcard URL, but we are verifying to see, when I click this login link, then I should be taken to this particular page. If not, the application is not behaving as expected. We can even verify this over here as well. And also we can enforce the page to wait for this page to come up, so that we even tell in fact that wait for this operation, so that just don't randomly wait for the page to load. This is another good thing about how we could able to wait as well. And this is the run and wait for navigation async. And there are so many other waiting operation available within Playwright's page, which is the iPage interface. You can see like wait for response async, wait for download async, wait for function async. This is like an JS handle async, so you can pass any of the JavaScript functions and you can wait for the JavaScript to work with for you. And similarly wait for navigation pop-up, so you can wait for a pop-up as well, and then you can wait for the request, the one that we just saw, and also wait for the selector, so you can wait for a specific selector to appear while you perform certain operation. And similarly wait for timeout, wait for worker, so this is the I worker, which is nothing but the worker operation or jobs which are running inside your page. You can wait for that. And similarly wait for a console message from your application, you can also wait for it. Similarly file chooser, load state, request finished, WebSocket, and URL async. So these are the super cool things that you can do for the wait for, and the same things are applicable for run and wait as well. This is cool. So there are so many things that you can do with Playwright, and that's exactly what we are going to be doing in this particular demo to see what are the things that we saw just now theoretically. So if I go back to our code over here, this is the same code that we just did on the login page upgraded.cs file in our last video, where we told how we can write the page object model code, something like this. But as you can see over here in this code, we are trying to click the page. We're not really telling to wait for a specific operation or a specific page to happen. So all we're doing is we're just going to go to this particular page, which is nothing but the home page, and then we are clicking the login button, and then we are entering the username and password. But while we enter the username and password, we don't really verify what page it is really. So in order to specify that, we could able to put it over here itself within our method. I'm going to do a method operation, something like this: wait page dot, and then I'm going to say run and you can see there are so many run and wait availables. So I'm going to say run and wait for navigation async, and then I'm going to say async of, I'm just going to open and close a parenthesis. I'm going to really not pass any parameter there. And then I'm going to perform an operation, which is nothing but the click operation. And once I perform the click operation that I usually do, then I also need to wait for the page navigation option, which is going to be this one. So this is the new page navigation option, the new page run and wait for navigation option. And over here, I could able to just specify what I really wanted to pass in. So if I just open and close the basis, you can see there are so many different properties available, like timeout, URL function, URL regex, URL string, and wait until, which is wait until for a specific operation as well. You can do that as well. So I'm going to say URL string, and you can note that the URL string is a global pattern, regex pattern, or a predicate receiving URL to match while waiting for the navigation, which means you can also pass the regex pattern here. And that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to say URL string is equal to, and then star slash, I can even put accounts login, or I can even just put login for that matter. And I'm going to save it. And if I go to our application, which is going to be the eaapp.xiaomi.com, and once I click this login link, you can see that it goes to the account/login. I'm just going to tell wildcard that just wait for /login for me, right? So this is the wildcard here. I'll just save this code, and I'm going to go back to our page object model code that we just executed in our last lecture. So I'm going to run this test, and let's see what's going to happen. And you can see that it clicked the login for me, and it's waiting for that particular page to happen, and the test has got passed as well, which is cool. And now let's say if I change the regex pattern just with one asterisk there, and if I try running the same test once again. So basically in Playwright, for the URL matching regex that you need to specify is 2* or 2*. If not, the code is not going to work. And you can see that currently it's just keep waiting because it couldn't be able to find or understand what pattern matching that you have given for the URL really. So it's just keep loading for you. And you can see that the test is eventually going to fail for you. So this is how you could actually create the regex operation over here. So you can see that it has got failed. So let me revert this code back, and I'm going to save this. So this is one way of using the run and wait for navigation async. And the next operation which I want to talk about is the API operation, which I was talking about. So if I click this employee list over here, so let's say if I go and inspect the element, and if I go to the network here, so you can see that I see all the employee list, which is this one, and this is the URL for that. And you can see that the status code of this URL is going to be 200 OK for me. And similarly, if I just go and perform a login operation, which is going to be the admin password is password, and if I hit login, and if I go to the employee details, this guy, you can see that it's employee detail, which is again status code is 200, and there is not really a lot of response coming up because this is an MVC code where the API is wrapped inside it, and you can see that this is where the data are really wrapped, and it is actually created inside the HTML file itself. There is no API operation being performed, rather it's directly going to be rendered inside the HTML file itself for you. That's how the response is coming up. So now my test is to see, will I click this particular employee list link or the employee details link over here, I actually get a request of get of /employee, something like this. And also I wanted to verify if the status code is 200 for that. So the API which is running, or the controller response which is running behind the scene for this particular application, returns me what I'm really looking for. So in order to do that, I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to copy this particular code over here, and then I'm going to paste this. I'm going to call this as test network. I'm going to check in this code to GitHub after this particular session so that you will have the latest code there. And then I'm also going to do this. I'm going to navigate to this particular page, which is all good. And once I click the login there, and once I enter the username and password there, then I need to perform the operation which I was talking about, which is going to be verifying if the response is really coming up for me or not. So in order to do that, I'm just going to write the code over here. Var wait for the response, which is going to be the page dot wait for request async. So I'm going to be just waiting for a specific request to really happen, and the request is going to be, I'm just going to put a predicate here as **. It gets something like an employee, which is the one which is going to be appearing for me once I hit this login. And as you can see, once I go over here and once I enter the username as admin and password as password, and once I log in, you will see that it takes me to the home page really. And I also need to click the employee list there, so probably that's what I should be doing over here. So let me go and modify that particular piece of code. Click the employee list, which is going to be employee lists, and it's going to be employee list as well. I'm going to save this. I'm going to write public void public async task click employee list. So I have created that, and now I can go over here. I'm just going to say wait login page dot click employee list. So you can see that once I click this employee list, then I need to see the employee is really coming up or not. So that is the URL that I'm looking for. And then I also need to get its response. So I'm going to say get response is equal to a wait of wait response. I'm just going to save this, and let's put a breakpoint here, and let's try to run this particular code. The browser is opened. It's going to enter the username and password, click the login. And now it has come over here for me. So you can see that it has clicked the employee list as well. And now we are expecting a response to coming up for us. And you can see that the wait response has already come up. So if I just go a bit more, so I can see that there's a get response really coming. And this get response is basically a request type. And let's see what it has returned for me. So you can see that it is returning me a lot of details. So it shows me that the method is basically a get operation, which is going to be the one that we just saw over here. It is a get operation, and the URL is basically the employee app, the eaapp.sawme.com/employee. We can also get all its frames and final request and stuff, which is required for us in future purpose. I mean, for now, we don't really require them, but in future, we do require all those details while we work with different pop-up windows and stuff. Yeah, so this is how we get a request async, which is going to be the request which is going to be performed while clicking this particular button. But the next question comes is, how do I get a response, like to get a response status as like 200? So this is the response status coming back from that particular server. So how do I get it? It's very, very simple. All we have to do is just wait for response async. This is exactly the same code. There is no change really. And I think this is better. So it should have wait request before. Now I have just put wait response already. And now if I try running the same code, you will see what I really mean, because this is going to show us the response detail stuff rather just the request alone. So while I try executing this test this time, you will notice that it is going to show me a lot more detail in the get response this time. So if I just go to the get response, so you can see that this is a response type, and you will notice that there are going to be a different header this time. It's like 9 header coming up. So all these are the header, and also you can see that there is a status text of OK, and the status is 200, and also what is the request that is being passed. So we can also get the request as well. So we get both the request as well as the response back from the same channel over here. So this is pretty good, because now we can also do an assertion to verify if the response which is going to be coming up for us is going to be 200 OK or not. So I can just do an assertion on that particular stuff. So this is how we can keep extending this particular code, not only just for the navigation, but also to get the response and stuff. The same code we can also write in a different fashion, which I was just showing in the slide. All we're going to do is we can just wrap it up this particular code like var response is equal to a wait of page dot run and wait for response. You can see this one, and then over here I can just pass the action, something like this, where you can see that, let me call on there, I'm just gonna perform the action, something like this, and over here I'm just gonna put the predicate, which is gonna be x such that x dot url dot contains / employee. That's it. So you can see that this is going to be the exact same thing, and we can get the response as well, pretty much like the same thing. So just going to comment this particular code, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here. So let's see if I try running it, what's going to happen. So now it has come to this particular method, which is the run and wait for response async. And now if I just leave it, you will see that it has clicked the employee list this time as well in the UI, and the response is going to be coming up for us. And you can see that the response is same, just the status 200, status text is OK, and it has all the details. We can even further extend this particular verification in a way that we can put more predicates here, something like and x dot, and you can say the status is equal to 200, for example. So you can do that as well. For example, if I just put an status as 201 or maybe 404 for that matter, something like this, you will see that the test is actually going to fail, or the test is going to keep waiting for this particular operation to happen, and the test is eventually going to time out because there is no such thing really happening. So you will see that Playwright is super smart enough to do that for me. So you can see that now it's going to go to this particular line, but you will see that it has clicked it, but the breakpoint has not really hit this particular line because it's keep waiting for this particular URL to contain, which it has got passed, but the status of 404 is failing because there is no such status really. So it's keep looking for that, and the test is eventually going to time out. So this is the way that you can actually write the code even more better fashion with the help of the network events in Playwright. Now next video, we will see even further about how we can extend this network events in even more better fashion to see how we can leverage the power of network events on a real-time e-commerce website, and how we can do a better automation testing there.